Hello, and welcome to this episode of Karmic. And we don't have a guest this time around because we've got a good lineup in the future. But today, I thought I would just do a quick, I don't know, reflection of thoughts as to what's going on. So weird happenings going on. Especially when you talk about um, our next generation of doctors. Do you know? And that's why I thought I would do a podcast on it because I don't know whether people are not talking about it or people don't want to talk about it or whether people's jobs stop them from talking about it. But there's something quite weird about people's discussion of issues or willingness to accept that there may be individuals involved in whether it's resident doctors training, whether it's their careers, futures, and unable to talk about it. There are people who, I don't know, there just seems to be a lack of understanding or openness or honesty. I understand lots of people are friends with each other, you work in a clique, and I've been in an interesting room for a decade now to know how the whole business does work. But, so let me give you an example. They recently come out with, after I don't know how many months, there's a medical training review and a diagnostic. And literally, you read it, and that isn't anything any resident doctor could sit down and write it for you in about a couple of days. Literally, if you went to, I don't know, you took all the reviews that were there, you took all the views on social media platform, ChatGPT could have done it for you. None of it is an incredible surprise. And as ever with the NHS, the conversation is about another document, another plan, but nobody quite knows how they're going to do it, right? So let's take the first example, which to me is quite amazing, right? So if you think about what has been the biggest fracas that has sort of built out over the last few years, it's been the issue with physician assistants, as we call them nowadays, after the Leng review. And the issue was they were coming into jobs and they were taking up training time. And really, that's the narrative that was there. And also surveys said so from specialist societies. Everywhere you looked at, that's what it said. They're taking up our training time and they are replacing doctors and what's going on and etc. etc. So the fracas is well known. Colleges changed hands, extraordinary general meetings, all the rest of it. And some of and I've been obviously heavily involved in it during my time as counselor of the RCP, because that was an issue that was continuously raised to me. And some of the people who fundamentally disagreed, all right, for whatever reason. So there was obviously the NHS workforce training education departments, Naveen Evans, the Shanna McLeod, there's GMC's Colin Melville, Steve Powis as the then medical director, and even, there was the email from Chris Whitty to the then college president, Sarah Clark, about when, the voting was going on, lots of people were trying to sort of say that the college members shouldn't vote against PAs or stopping the trend or, the their progression, so to speak. And I remember this who came into the Royal College of Physicians that day spoke very clearly. And, for right or wrong, that's what they stood for. And they were very clear in their views that PAs were not hampering training or taking up jobs, which is what resident doctors disputed. Right. Now, then you turn around and have a look at this particular document which you referred to. And you look at the steering group, and it has got Naveen Evans, it's got Shona McLeod, it's got Colin Melville, it's got Steve Powis and Chris Whitty leading it. And I'm sitting there thinking, how does it work? Right? How do people who fundamentally disagree that the training time of resident doctors has been taken up by other professionals? Now, I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong or whatever, and we'll come to that, I'm sure, in due course, or believe that their roles are being replaced, be part of a training review, which is supposed to tackle exactly that. That's just amazing. And of course, the Royal Colleges and everybody have to do what they have to do. They've come out and said, yeah, broadly supported, but nothing in there is controversial. Nothing, as I said, ChatGPT would have done it for you in 15, 20 minutes or less. So there's that. And the only explanation I can think of is either there are some people who have to be kept in roles because, I don't know, their belief is they know better. But, if you look at any degree of accountability for the NHS England workforce team. It's failed. Training is a disarray. Trainees are saying it doesn't work. All surveys are saying where it is. And on top of that, if you factor in the whole issue of international medical graduates, where they are, locally employed doctors' jobs, PLAB exams running, no linkage of workforce needs that are coming from abroad, linking in with the group of people already here, you wonder how it all works out. And I don't know. You have the General Medical Council, quite rightly, part of this training review, and they're saying in this that we need to look at international medical graduates and their ratios and where they should be and what we should do. Why is PLAB running the way it is? I don't know. And our colleagues back in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, I mean, forgetting all the rhetoric right now, oh, we don't want any foreigners and all that. Where do they get the information that, there isn't enough jobs and they should not apply here or waste their money and all this sort of stuff because they need to make an informed choice. So I don't know. I mean, it feels like nobody's quite interested in taking up the issue for resident doctors because if that's the committee, I think you can take a guess where this is all going. Because, the next thing is about talks about ACPs and jobs. At the end of the day, if you're going to train up people beyond what their baseline is, you have to give them training with a secure time done by a senior consultant. The senior consultant, this is a massive newsflash for everybody. I don't know, but senior consultants like ourselves only have a finite time to teach or have time in their job plans. We rarely do it properly, sadly, for many of our existing resident doctor trainees. And we now have, so there's only the maths makes sense when you have to give up existing training time for resident doctors to others. There is no extra investment of money or time into senior doctors' job plans to take on more. So if that's where we are heading, that's fine. If that's what we want to do, that we want everybody to be at par and there's no distinction between doctors or anybody else, that's totally fine. But at least be honest with the public and the resident doctors about their future, their jobs, be very clear with the public about, what is the definition of a doctor and where do the lines lie. And if you don't want any lines to lie, and I don't agree with that, but I may be wrong. Maybe it's all fantastic. And it doesn't, my personal belief is that lesser trained people will bring you lesser efficiency and more issues with safety, which probably explains why safety is such light touch. Care Quality Commission is what it is. I mean, their chief exec just had to resign. And everybody's on very light touch on the regulation right now because raising issues with anybody, I mean, you have your PAs in the system. A lot of people aren't even registered under any regulatory body, evidently still can work, which again is another kettle of fish. But so I think that's what I wanted to come around and talk about today. Very short, but it's just weird, you know. And beyond that, a slight sidetrack I wanted to mention is that a lot of people have recently left, senior positions. Chief exec of NHS England Workforce, chief exec of CQC, medical director of NHS England. If you have personal relations with them, absolutely fantastic. And you may know them as individuals who are very nice people and great in their personal interactions. But I don't think we should be glossing over anybody's lack of progress in their leadership roles. And I think it gives the wrong impression in my book that if a national leader leaves due to issues showing gaps in their leadership or failure to achieve what they have done, I don't think there's a need for other, people, it starts to look like a clique that people come out and say amazing things about them when it's probably not warranted, or at least the people they serve don't think so. So I think it just sends out the wrong signals. It feels like the message we are putting out, the leadership only belongs to certain groups of people and cliques, and that's not how we're going to progress anything much. If anybody believes things are fantastic, and I'm saying this from somebody, you could say that, oh, he's just being an armchair critic. Well, I would disagree after my time in NHS England and having the, outcomes we have and the access we have in technology and funding and whatever. But it is weird. It is incredibly weird for people to fail to recognize some of the issues that we have. So just wanted to basically talk about it because I think we need to have these conversations in the public domain. And there also seems to be the rhetoric that, to get to progress in the NHS and go to higher positions and, have honors and degrees and stuff, you have to compromise that level of integrity. And I personally don't think so. I think I would encourage more of the younger generation to have a understand where your Northern Star is and not compromise that. And I go back to again of resident doctors. I'm a doctor, a senior doctor myself, and you know, if you're not going to say to me, and I've said this, I think a number of times in Royal College of Physicians meetings, when I was doing my role as a counsellor, that there needs to be, for want of a better word, a batting order. If I've only got X number of hours to teach and train, you need to tell me what is my batting order, right? You can't say you can teach anybody, right? You can't say an ACP, a ANP, a PA, a resident doctor, a somebody doing their research. Everybody can be trained by me. That's just illogical because then you're providing lesser training to everybody. So my encouragement to people who are looking into resident doctors is please involve people who genuinely believe in resident doctors and have a genuine debate about doctors' replacement, training, situations not being enough. But on the other hand, if you made a policy decision as a healthcare system that that is the way we want to go with lesser regulation, lesser safety issues, just about access with anybody, then be honest with the public that you are not necessarily seeing a doctor. And that's fine because that's what you expect the public to be. And my worry is this training review that is coming up. And I think it goes hand in hand with the workforce plan being delayed. Now, I don't know any part of it, but I suspect it's not got the approval of anybody, which is why it's been delayed. And you won't blame anybody for not giving their approval if it's so far off the mark. I mean, the last workforce plan, which was led by all the people concerned, I mean, if that's not a disaster, I'm not quite sure what on earth would qualify as a disaster. You launch a long plan called the long-term workforce plan in the middle of 2023, and by 2024 it's now going through a rewrite, and now it's like a complete refresh in 2025, and now it won't come out till 2026. So we have an NHS which doesn't have a workforce plan, um, or indeed for that matter a workforce leadership at the moment. So it's all very odd when you think about the workforce is the biggest challenge we have. So to leave the end of it with some more positive stuff, I still think there is hope. I think there's still enough people in the system who want to do the right thing by resident doctors, but they need to be involved, and they exist in the colleges. And I've been in the college to know a fair few people in there who would have a much better role, much better say in there. I think NHS England, WTE is being shelved and it needs a new refresh. You need people who really can understand workforce doing this sort of role. So if you do that, there's still a chance, some trajectories, some understanding. I think there needs to be a very, very valid understanding of what is the trajectory of jobs that you're going to put out, what is the training towards, what is the training for. I mean, if anybody says the training of locally employed doctors is the same as the others, I mean, you must be having a laugh. I mean, either that or you don't work in the NHS. So lots and lots of gaps, and I'm afraid there's a lots of tough times coming if that's the way in which we continue. That this is not right. So this is not right, and do you know why it's mostly not right? Is because it's being done by people with the privilege of me, right? I have the privilege that some of these people I mentioned before have, right? Honors, high positions, great pensions, great salaries. We got them all, right? And with our privilege, we are deciding to make changes into resident doctors' lives, which I am 100% sure they themselves would have protested against if it had happened to them. So you don't go up and then change everything based on a whim or based on somebody else's bidding, is my view. So, anyway, so I wish things could be better. And I will be very honest, the names I said, they have their views. And in a democracy, you are most welcome to have a view that you don't believe training is being replaced of doctors by others. But then, if you are all going to be leading the training review of doctors, that's the philosophy to which we've already committed, rather than having a mixture of people who will give you a different perspective. That's my view. But there we are. What do I know? I'm a diabetologist. We'll stop to, as a lot of people say to me, you should stick to diabetes path. There'll be less controversy in your life. But, as I said, privilege cuts always, and with my privilege, I would like to sort of raise the issue and talk for our resident doctors. I'm 110% always behind the resident doctors. I think, it's part of my role and responsibility to look after the generation next. So there we are. So, well, hope you all have a good week ahead and stuff. And as I said, we have some good speakers lined up, but today was just about more of a monologue piece, just to sort of give a view about this training review diagnostic, a little bit about what's going on around people resigning, new jobs, and all that. So I thought I would just mention that. So thank you for listening as ever, and subscribe and listen to the other talks, which would be brilliant. As I said, there's some fantastic sort of things, Roy Lilly's views on the NHS and stuff. But till then, till the next time.